Warning, this video contains fast flashing images. It may cause discomfort and trigger seizures for people with photosensitive epilepsy. Viewer discretion is advised. Safety first, guys. I've always traditionally used Windows for my computing as, is the norm for most people. But every once in a while I would stick my toes in a metaphorical pool of operating systems. You have your Windows, your Linux, your Mac OS, whatever. I've always loved trying new things. But I do remember my first attempt of Linux quite clearly, because I was about 12 to 13 years old. This was about 20 years ago, as hard as that is to admit. And I had heard of this cool thing called Ubuntu. Now, I only lasted about an hour at that time, because while I did find just the Unity desktop environment, or whatever the hell it's called, was absolutely fantastic, trying to play video games is which was my, my favorite pastime at the time, was a pain in the ass. Because while Wine was absolutely good if you knew how to use it, it wasn't nearly as good as it is today, with Proton and, all the other tools we have at our disposal. Said about 20 years later, I've learned a lot since. I even took a course in computer network technology, and, I've never stopped trying to use Linux. Usually it would pull me away. I would go back to Windows after a while because I'd want to use whatever software was locked to Windows. I'd want to use whatever game was locked to Windows. But something changed recently. You see, I built this computer that I'm currently using back in November last year, 2025. And at first I built it with an RTX 5090 and a 9800 X3D, 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM, and some what-have-yous and whatnots. And everything was great. Worked great on Windows. I installed Linux. It worked great for the most part. There were a couple of nagging problems. And, not to shit on Linux. It wasn't a Linux problem. It was NVIDIA problems. But it was still a problem for me. I was unable to play some of the games that I wanted to play. And it wasn't because they just don't work on Linux. It was that they just didn't work on my GPU. Which, obviously, if you pay $3,000 for a GPU, that kind of fucking sucks. And that sucks a lot. But the two games I wanted to play was Monster Hunter Wilds and The Last of Us Part 1. Monster Hunter Wilds just wouldn't boot. Couldn't boot it on the 5000 series NVIDIA GPU unless you downgraded your drivers. And as much as I love Linux, downgrading drivers is kind of a pain in the ass. It tends to break a lot of stuff. And Last of Us Part 1, it would hard crash if I dared to run it at any frame rate above 40. Which, again, if you buy a GPU for $3,000, that's not great. That's pretty bad. But so I decided, instead of just going back to Windows, because I don't really like the Windows desktop experience, I find it to be very problematic in a lot of ways. I decided, everybody always says that AMD is so much better. So I decided, hey, you know what? I'll get a 9070 XT and I'll give it a try. If I don't like it, I can just swap back to the 5090 and go back to Windows. But what ended up happening was I absolutely loved it. Everything just worked. Everything was fantastic for the most part. But a new problem developed instead. Now Windows became unusable. And I'm not talking unusable as in a couple of games were just not great. I'm talking the entire experience was terrible. I would have stutters constantly. It was just not like I would play a video game, like let's say Dota 2, and my FPS counter would say that I'm capped out on my hertz. I would be 165 FPS, but it would feel like I'm at like 20. Disgusting experience, quite frankly. Like, I'm perfectly fine with like locking my FPS to 60 sometimes, but that is terrible. And I would get these stutters no matter what I was doing. Whether I was playing video games, I was browsing, I was trying to do some productivity. It didn't matter. It would just stutter constantly. So I did something new. I completely uninstalled Windows and I went all in on Linux. Now this was back in December last year, and now we're in July. And now I've been distro hopping a little bit, but I've been staying mainly with CachyOS. And it's just been so great. And I kind of want to talk to you guys about why I like Linux. Like, what is it that makes me come back time and time again? Is it that I simply want to be a contrarian? Is it that I like freedom, customizability? There's so many reasons, and I would like to tell you some of mine. So let's get into it. Okay, so like on the topic of gaming on Linux, I want to talk about this first because I am a gamer at my core. I love playing video games. It's pretty much what I do. You know, might be a loser, but hey, I have fun doing it. And as of today, 2026, 7th of July, gaming is absolutely fantastic on Linux 99% of the time. The only time that I ever have to worry about not being able to play a game is if it's an anti-cheat game. And, well, I think I can speak for anyone that uses Linux regularly. This is now a known entity. We know that they are not going to work. It's not because of Linux. It's because of the game developers or the anti-cheat developers not supporting Linux. Like this, it's not a... It can be a problem for you, of course. If you want to play Valorant, then you want to play Valorant. Counter-Strike might be a viable alternative, but doesn't mean that that's what you want to play. But for me personally, I've never had problems with it. And any gameplay that I show in the background here is going to be on Linux. Like I'm able to play any game that I want. I never have to worry about it when I start up Steam and I boot up a random game. Like for example, this past year I was playing Resident Evil 9 Requiem, 100% of the game, and I did it all on Linux. Pretty much I could play it from day one without a single problem. Hell, I could even do the modding for it, which granted, in terms of Resident Evil, it's very simple and it's basically just drop in and you're done. But I do want to talk about modding as well, because I love playing games like Skyrim, like Fallout, and those games are very mod-centric. And while doing like a full-on custom mod list for it, it's not the greatest. It's absolutely doable, mind you, but it's just not the greatest. There are programs like Jackify, of which I do have a video on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. I'll even link it in the description, where it can basically take an existing mod list. If you have ever heard of Wabbajack on Windows, it's basically that, but for Linux, where it will just take a mod list and it will install it for you. So you're at least able to play modded playthroughs of these games, which to me, that was a problem back in the day. Like this was one of the things that would make me stop using Linux, because I wanted to play Skyrim modded, or I wanted to play Fallout New Vegas modded, or Fallout 4. But now I can just press install and then I can play. I'll even show some footage of me playing a modded Fallout New Vegas here just to showcase just how easy it runs. And even then, like as far as multiplayer games go, there are still a lot of great options. Like yes, you cannot play Valorant, but maybe you can play, you can play Counter-Strike instead. Or you can't play League of Legends, maybe you can play Dota instead. And there are still other just great options like Marvel Rivals, Overwatch. They work out of the gate. Arma works. You got like so many different games that do still work, and it seems to me that day by day less and less games do not work. And I think that with the recent release of SteamOS and Steam machines, I do think that those barriers are slowly being broken down, because I think that as the community grows, then just the reason to support it is going to grow. So basically, when it comes to my experience, I find that performance-wise, I basically lose nothing. I don't really... I never really sit here and want for features or want for performance, because by playing by using stuff like CachyOS Proton, I'm able to just immediately upgrade my FSR to FSR4 really easily by just adding in a simple little command line in the starting line of Steam, and that just works. I got, FSR works, I got ray tracing works, it all basically just works. And quite frankly, there's no real comments that I can make about it other than, well, I don't have to worry about anything. Meanwhile, on Windows, I feel like nowadays I have to tinker more. With Linux, all I do is I just set a Proton layer that I wanted to use on default. I set a couple of commands, takes 2 seconds on first boot, and then I'm done. Now I'm just playing a video game, and I love that. So let's get into the next part of this video, because gaming is obviously fantastic now. Okay, so barring gaming being in a pretty good state, we have some obvious contenders. We have like productivity, for example. Like obviously I'm sitting here and I'm editing a video and I've been recording clips and maybe I do a little bit of streaming on the side. So I want to talk about like how does that work? And for the most part, it's absolutely fine. I'm not going to say it's great because quite frankly, video editing on Linux is somewhat of a nightmare. And I do want to preface that by saying that it's not that it doesn't work, and pretty much anything that you want to do video editing wise, it's going to work, but it's going to work with a caveat. Like for example, right now I'm editing this video using DaVinci Resolve, which kind of an annoying software to use on Linux because it doesn't actually support H.264 or H.265 or AAC. So I basically have to be very mindful of what format I record in, whether it's audio or video, or I'll have to transcode it. It's not a huge problem because, you know, it's generally speaking, for this kind of video, it's taken me like 5-10 minutes extra work just to re-encode stuff. But let's say you're a content creator and you know you want to have very long stretches of footage you gotta go through, then all of a sudden that kind of adds up. So for video editing, I would say that it absolutely works, and once I got DaVinci Resolve up and running, it worked it kind of works just fine. I don't really have any problems with it, but I also just wouldn't say that it's great. It works, and it works the way you would expect it to, barring the encoding issues. And then you also have other options though. You don't have just DaVinci Resolve. You also have Kdenlive, for example, which is a popular software on Linux. Personally, I really do not like Kdenlive. I absolutely despise it because every single time that I try to do something in it, it's very laggy, it's very problematic. It just kind of feels like I'm fighting the software a lot of the time. And not in the sense that like, oh, I just need to figure out how it works. But I think that this is one of the things that Linux generally does pretty poorly, which is UX. Because while the core features will generally be there, the way to actually interact with those features can be a bit of a mess with no real standardization and no real like rhyme or reason behind it. It's like I saw a comparison being that Linux is a lot of hammers without handles. And I think that's a pretty apt way to describe it, where like Kdenlive, it absolutely works, but you're gonna have to adapt to it. It's not gonna adapt to you. Now whether that's a problem, might be, because obviously this is a very niche thing, but I would say that just off the rip, if you are very content creator focused and like you do a lot of video editing, I would probably not go Linux for my main computing. Maybe if all you need is just DaVinci Resolve and you're fine with the issues that I just stated, then that's fine. You can do it, and there's nothing really stopping you. It's just not going to be quite as good as it is on like Windows or Mac. That is just a fact, but it's in no way unusable. It's just a couple of more nuisances involved. And I mean, like, hell, editing this video right now, I have found it to be pretty much fine for the most part. A little bit of a setup process, but once I got past that, it's all good. But then we got to continue on this topic though. We're going to go into like recording and streaming. And just so you guys know, if you want to check me out, I do stream every once in a while on Twitch at twitch.tv/Ozolini. I'm just saying, you can check that out. And I always stream in Linux, you're saying. But yeah, so streaming on Linux, absolutely fine. I mean, OBS has a native Linux client. There's literally no problem. Same for recording. It's literally no problem. It's no different than Windows, barring extremely minimal things. Being that, like, for example, on Windows, you would have game capture, but you don't quite have that in Linux. You have instead... can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's basically window capture, and it captures the game. Like, it's functionally very small different, and it just works. Like I said, I recorded all of this video that you're seeing, all this footage, and all of these things in Linux. I'm not having any problems with it. Like, I get good quality out of it. Like, when I stream on Twitch, I can stream in 1440p 60 fps without a problem. I can use their they have like some new different broadcasting system that just works basically. There's no problem with it at all. And I would absolutely say that if your main focus is just streaming or like very light editing, Linux is absolutely perfect. There's no problem with it. The only problems might come in the deeper you want to go into like editing, you might run into some problems. And I'm not gonna speak on like graphical editing, because quite frankly I don't know shit about like photography or editing pictures. I don't know that shit. I just don't, so I'm not gonna speak about that. But from what I understand, the general gist is, if you are a musician or if you are a photographer, you probably want the software that is available on Mac or Windows rather than Linux. That's just the reality of it. It just is what it is. But yeah, so let's get into the last category of this video. I know it's a bit of a rambling video, and it's not meant to be taken as like, this is the reason why you should go Linux. It's mainly just my thoughts, and yeah, I could go into more depth, but either way, we're going into the last segment here. Okay, so for the last segment, I want to talk about just the general control, like the customizability of Linux versus Windows. Because from the last segment, you might get the feeling that I'm very negative to it. But the truth is that I am extremely positive to Linux because of the fact that, like I said, Kdenlive doesn't work well for me. But I have options, right? So it's okay. Like, at the end of the day, one software might not work well for us, but we can choose another. And Linux truly embodies that ethos. That if one thing doesn't work for you, 99% chance there are other options for you to try instead. And I love that about Linux. I love the fact that you have all these different desktop environments. I love the fact that you have all these different distros. I love the fact that, while yes, like most people will say, swapping different distros isn't gonna be a huge difference, and generally speaking, it isn't. But there are still differences. Like, for example, you have Debian-based distros, you have Fedora-based distros, you have Arch-based distros, you have outliers like OpenSUSE, Void Linux, NixOS, you have Gentoo, you have Linux from scratch. You have all of these options and flavors. And I love having options. I love being able to change what I want. I love being able to identify a problem and then being able, like, okay, this might be a problem, a legitimate or an illegitimate. It might be a skill issue. It might just be a core problem with whatever it is I'm trying to use or whatever I'm trying to do. But there is almost always an option to change it in some way. With Windows and with macOS, I've never felt that way. I've always felt like there's always a barrier somewhere. And while, yeah, sometimes the barrier's, far off and you're not going to be noticing it, sometimes it feels like a chokehold on you. But on Linux, I am allowed to break my own system. I'm allowed to break the rules. I'm allowed to do whatever I want, Like, just core customizability to start off with. We have the distros. Let's just go with the basic ones. You have Arch, you have Fedora, you have Debian, right? And you have all the various spins based off these three major ones, I would say. And then not only do you have those three choices, you then also have desktop environments. Like, what do you want a standard desktop environment? Maybe you want KDE, or maybe you want GNOME. These are very different ethoses, but they're working in tandem. You can choose whichever one you want. You want more customizability and to make it more of your own? Go KDE. You want something that's a little bit more tailored and a little bit more, opinionated. You want it to be what it is. You got GNOME. And then you got other options. You got XFCE. You got You got Budgie, you got Deepin, you got so many different options to choose from. And that's fantastic. And then that's not it. You also have tiling window managers. You have Hyperland, you have iFree, you have all of these different options that let you choose how do you want to engage with your computer. Because I built my computer, I bought the hardware for my computer, I think the software should be mine as well. I don't think it should be up to whoever at Microsoft to decide how I use my computer or how I engage with it. Because I mentioned that while yes, Linux does in some ways suffer from UX experience, user experience issues, it does so for a reason. Because most of the software that you'll find on Linux that isn't, you know, just random software ported over, it's made purposely. It's made to do something by whatever Joe that decided, hey, this is an issue that I have, I want to solve it. So he solves it. So you get that drawback of maybe a little bit worse user experience, but you get the advantage of just options. And I think that is worth so much more. Because I would rather have an unpolished gemstone than a polished piece of fucking shit, which to me that is what Windows is now. Like, to top off this video, I do want to say that if Linux doesn't fulfill your needs, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because Linux at the end of the day, it's a tool. Just like Windows is a tool. At the end of the day, you got to look at what do I want and what do I need to do. Can this tool suffice for this? And for me, Linux fits all my needs and then some. And it has made me enjoy using my computer again. And quite frankly, I think that is beautiful. And I think that every single person that works on making Linux better, they are making the world a little bit better doing so. But yeah, so I'm sorry for this kind of being a bit of a rambling and ranting video, because I meant to be a bit more objective and scripted, so to speak, but then I kind of went off on tangents. But I think that in a way, I just want to tell you guys why I love Linux and why I decided to swap from Windows to Linux. Because, I mean, computers are awesome, guys. That's that's all there is to say. They're fucking awesome. So I hope you guys have a good one, and I don't know, maybe I'll see you guys next time. And by the way, just saying, if you guys are interested in me doing like a video of me trying like, various of the different, because like I've only really had experience with, the more simplistic distros like Arch, Debian and Fedora based ones. But if you guys would like to see a video of me trying out like NixOS or Void Linux or what have you, I think that could be fun. So comment down below if you liked the video, if there's something you would want to see me improve. If you thought I said something wrong, please do let me know. I am not some guru of Linux. I'm probably going to say some things that are wrong, so just let me know. And I hope you guys have a good one. See you next time.